and welcome to another episode of History of Westeros podcast, a podcast dedicated to George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire book series, as well as HBO's Game of Thrones. This episode is a spoilery episode, so please beware. We'll be covering the previews for the next episode at the very end of the episode, though, for book readers who don't want to be spoiled on TV show things. So this episode will talk a lot about stuff from the books and how it pertains from this latest episode. For our thoughts on the episode as a whole, go to part 1, which is spoiler-free, which we have an unsullied TV viewer if you're not a frequent viewer of our show. So check that out.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, we're talking more about Mockingbird, a.k.a. The Big Setup, Season 4, Episode 7. I call it The Big Setup because of all the huge events that happen that are setting up even huger events. For us spoiler-conscious people, it's more of a transitional episode. For show people, there's probably a lot of surprises, but we all knew what was coming, so we're not going to be surprised again. There weren't any big deviations. There were some minor deviations, certainly, but let's focus on the things in the episode that had an impact on what might happen in the books, or things that were different in the books, or just things that are worth discussing because they're happening right now.
But before we get to that, we have a little bit of a spiel for you guys. Things we wanted to say related to our lives and related to our fans or listeners.
Well, we're going to be going to Con Carolinas in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Just
about 10 days.
Yeah, I guess it's a little less than 2 weeks. Yeah. And that is the main reason we're going there is George R. R. Martin himself will be there, and he'll be doing a reading. And depending on what he reads from, how juicy it is, we may have to do an episode just based on the reading. He often reads chapters from upcoming books, so he might read a chapter from The Winds of Winter, and if it's one we haven't heard before, or if it's one that we get new information on, we'll certainly be talking about it. And if he might read from, I think it's more likely that he reads from The World of Ice and Fire. And so we'll maybe get some excerpts from that, and we'll do our best to take great notes and report back to you guys on what we learn, what we experience. We hopefully will get a chance to meet George and ask him some questions. So that's another thing where you guys all can really help us on. We have been racking our brains for good questions to ask George. Now, what makes a good question is something that he will answer. You can't just ask him, who is Jon Snow's mother? He's not going to answer that. He'll say, keep reading. That's what he does. So we have to think of questions that maybe will reveal a little something. That's our ideal question, something that gets him to tell us a little something to expand on a topic.
Also relates to history. We would prefer our question relate to the history of the world, though that's, if we think of a really good question that isn't really history related, we would still go for it, of course.
So if you have ideas for us, please send them to us. Like I said, we've been thinking really hard about this, and it's hard to decide because we'll probably only get a chance to ask maybe 1 or 2 questions each.
Yeah. We figure there is at least a chance of us being able to ask 1 question at least, because there's 2 of us, there's 2 Q&A sessions. We have 4 chances. We got to get 1 in, but hopefully we might not even get 1, but
hopefully in future conventions, the show is thanks a lot to your help and support and spreading the word and sending donations and all that. We have continued to grow, and we're getting more subscribers, and we're getting a lot more publicity. People are taking notice that we exist. Hopefully, one of these future conventions, we'll be able to go in with a press pass and have more access to George and things like that. But we didn't even think of asking for a press pass to this con, and some of our listeners were like, why did you do that? You should have. So for future spots, we'll be trying to do more like that and trying to get more closer to the source, so to speak. And as we grow and get more exposure, that should become a lot more likely. So thanks again for helping spread the word and getting us to where we are now. You guys are a big part of that, perhaps the biggest part of that. If it weren't for you guys, we wouldn't bother to be here at all. So let's get started. One last thing, actually, before we get into the material. We wanted to give a shout out to our good friend Azad Injakian. I already screwed it up.
Yeah.
I asked him how to Injakian. Yeah, I asked him how to pronounce it, and then I forgot to look at what he said. So we meant to give this shout out in the non-spoiler part of the episode, but we were kind of in a rush. So Azad, we're going to get you again a bit later. And we also, Azad is a great artist. Some of you may know him already. Comics of Ice and Fire is his Facebook page, and he does a lot of really awesome comics that are humorous and sometimes heartfelt and interesting. He's a great talent, and you should check him out, Comics of Ice and Fire on Facebook, and he's Azad on Twitter as well. I'm not going to even try to spell your name without looking at it. So definitely look out for him, and thanks a lot to him for supporting us as
His
well.
comics are awesome.
Yeah. So
really
let's get into the episode. So let's
Yes.
start with the first thing that I took note of was that I thought was worthy of spoiler discussion was with Arya and Rorge and Biter and Sandor and all that. So obviously Brienne won't be dealing with them. So we wonder if Brienne is going to take those horrible wounds she gets at Rorge and Biter's hands, if she's going to have that happen in some other way. That's a simple thing. She can easily get wounded in a number of ways. Westeros is a very dangerous place. There's no difficulty in coming up with dangerous situations for them to put her into. But it's interesting to note that this is a bit different. I would have almost thought that maybe they would have done something more with the whole story about Sandor being out there being a bandit when it's not really Sandor. But I guess that's not really possible because they didn't. Part of that was somebody else wearing his helm, and they didn't seem to want to continue using the helm. They had it in the first episode, season 1, and then they just kind of got rid of it.
Yeah, that's true. They did.
So I think that they kind of maybe they just didn't have the ability to do that because they didn't use the helmet. So it would be hard to tell that story. So I do think that this bite that he got on his neck is going to be the way that he gets feverish, and Arya's going to have to leave him, and that's where he probably ends up going to the Quiet Isle, and we'll see how they handle that.
Will just die. I've seen some people saying they might just kill Sandor.
Yeah.
But possibility, I don't think it's likely.
I agree.
I'm not that optimistic about the Quiet Isle stuff though, as well. I don't know.
Well, what does Brienne have to do now? I mean, they've already kind of changed. Like, if she's going to the Vale, that's already a change.
That's true.
So I have a feeling she's not going to get to the Vale. But if she does go to the Vale, I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe that's something that actually is going to happen in the Winds of Winter. That's where she goes in the wind, and they're just like way jumping forward to that. Of course, in the book, an interesting thing that's happening is Sir Shadrick of the Mad Mouse of Shady Glen appears at the Gates of the Moon. Well, not the Eyrie. The Gates of the Moon. That's where Sansa and Sweet Robin and Littlefinger. I almost called him Sweetfinger. And Littlefinger are down at the Gates of the Moon rather than at the Eyrie. They've made their descent. So it'll be interesting to see what that plot line entails, and maybe this is an extension of that, because Brienne meets Sir Shadrick on the road, and then Sir Shadrick shows up at the Vale. So maybe they're all going to meet at the Vale? I don't know. Of course, we have no idea how to predict that, just throwing out possibilities. Certainly it does seem like this is the beginning of Sandor's fake death, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so let's see. We've also got Gaiman, the little kid at the wall, who they keep showing, which gives us a lot of confidence that he is, especially with the talk about him being the archer, or being a good archer, rather, it's almost certain that, in my mind, that he is going to be the one to kill Ygritte. And that will be sad and satisfying at the same time, because it will be sad that Ygritte is dead, but also that kid does deserve to get a little revenge, I think. And so that'll be kind of a bittersweet moment, assuming that's how it goes. Is that, you kind of think it's going to go that way too? Or I
don't really think that. No.
Yeah, you think something else is going to happen?
I haven't really thought about that. No.
Certainly, I do think Gaiman will participate in the battle. Maybe he won't kill Ygritte specifically.
Yeah.
So let's see. With I don't think there was much with Dario and Dany. That whole plot line, there's some changes there, but I can't really. It's hard to predict. They're sending Hizdahr Zolorak off to Yunkai and Dario as well. It doesn't seem like a huge change. I doubt. I mean, in the book, they're just going out to scout. Dario goes out scouting and protecting the passes and fighting some of the other mercenary companies that are doing the same thing from the other side. So there's a lot of stalemate back and forth going on there. And this is probably just a replacement for that. But if you guys have any theories as to what might be happening there, the significance of Hizdahr Zolorak going to Yunkai, I don't really have much on that. I think that's just kind of a wait-and-see situation. So we'll wait and see. With Melisandre and Selyse, a big thing in this scene, actually a couple big things in this scene, she's now wearing her ruby, which a lot of people see the ruby that she wears in the books, including myself, as an indication that she's hiding her true features. Certainly, this is the evidence for this is that the fake Mance Raider is wearing a ruby. The fake Lightbringer has a ruby on it. These rubies glow. Mance Raider describes the ruby as he kind of describes it as if it's controlling him, how it has power over him. So perhaps there's a couple possibilities. Perhaps the theory that the ruby is tied to the glamour is wrong. It could be the showrunner simply just deleted that whole aspect, or they're explaining Melisandre's age differently, or it's a mistake.
Or they just didn't catch that themselves. Or
maybe they're not aware of it. Yeah,
that's all possible.
It could also mean that the ruby has a different function. The glamour aspect could still be there, but it's not really tied to the ruby. It could be a control thing. For example, Mance says how the ruby is controlling him, and Melisandre says that that's a slave ruby, and she is wearing the master around her neck. And she never thinks of it having anything to do with concealing her appearance or anything. Not that omission necessarily proves anything, but it is curious that she never thinks of anything along those lines when we see her own point of view. So that's very curious. The lack of the ruby certainly maybe confuses things, maybe sheds some light on things. Another interesting thing she mentions is some of those substances. She mentions the substance that creates a thick black smoke that will cause men to go to have great fear. We see this smoke used in the book. In fact, it's Mirri Maz-Dur uses that thick black smoke in the tent when she's doing the ritual with Drogo. I believe it's Irri and Dorea flee in fear. Dany notices that fear, and Dany shows how tough she is because she resists it for a little while. The fear is in her, and she recognizes that she's afraid, and she's kind of uncertain why she's feeling so afraid. But eventually, she's told she has to leave, and that kind of is why she eventually leaves the tent. So, a little clue to how tough Dany's mindset is, her psyche. She was resisting that substance that causes fear. So that's kind of interesting. I'm glad they threw that in there. It's a good detail from the books. Okay, what are some other spoilers? We talked about that already. We also have what is going to happen in the Vale with the fallout from Lysa's death. Now, we all know that Peter is a great manipulator, and it seems like he's going to get Sansa to maybe tell some lies for him or something along those lines. We can't figure out exactly what's going to happen because, of course, we know in the books he's able to blame it on Marillion. Marillion isn't really even in the show. So this vehicle has to be accomplished in a completely different way. And I don't really know what they're going to do with that. So what do you think, Shay?
I don't know. I can't say anything about it because we're not talking about the previews in this, and we see the preview.
Well, I mean, I know, but
we've seen the preview, and that they show a little bit about, and that has informed my
okay,
thoughts.
That does make it a little different.
I worry that I'll give it away. The preview. So.
Okay, so we won't go into too much detail on that, but it's definitely a change, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I do think that Peter it's not something he just did randomly. He had a plan. He knew what he was doing, and he's prepared for this. He's got some sort of idea. And no matter what's important to keep in mind is that she is not really that important. She married into the Vale. She's not an Arryn by birth. The Vale Lords care about Robin. He's their lord. They're not nearly as concerned about Lysa, the Lord's mother, especially because she's really unpopular as a ruler and as a figure in general. They don't like that she kept them out of the war. They don't like how she takes care of Robert, and they don't like how basically she's kind of a coward. They don't like that either. So I don't think
that she wouldn't marry any of them.
And that's true for sure. That's a very good point. A lot of them wanted to marry her, and she kind of just played it cool and let them play off each other and kind of enjoyed the attention. And that we don't really see that on the show, but certainly that's how it is in the books. So that's it's one of those things. It's like Joffrey. Not a whole lot of people really. It's offensive to a lot of people that the king was murdered, and people are like, "Oh, Tyrion's a kinslayer," and they hate that, but they don't actually care that Joffrey's dead. They're kind of like, "Yeah, well, good riddance," but still, Tyrion's a criminal for doing that, even though we all know he didn't.
Yep.
So, let's see. What else do we have?
I don't know. Hot pie.
Hot pie, of course, that was really fun. Arya being revealed to Brienne and Podrick. I really don't know what that's going to mean. It might mean nothing, but just the fact that Arya is known to be alive is interesting to me. And I wonder, it's possible that they might not do the fake Arya plot. I really wonder how they could get away with not doing that. But hey, they've dropped a lot of other significant plots and done a decent job. Not always, but reasonably decent in some cases. Maybe.
When did we last see Jane?
Did we see her at all?
Did we see her? That's why I don't know if we ever saw Sansa have a friend.
Yeah, I don't think she's been in the show at all. So I don't know how they're going to pull off fake Arya.
Didn't we see Sansa? I think we saw her like whispering with a girl.
Yeah.
During the feast at Winterfell.
At Winterfell, yeah, her friend before the food got thrown at her.
Yeah, I think that was supposed to be Jane or something.
But basically, she's not in the show. Yeah, like if that was her name wasn't given. She certainly isn't at King's Landing. She certainly wasn't trained by Littlefinger to be a prostitute. Which is what happens in the books. So this is a good chance that plot line is getting sliced. I don't know how they'll handle it some other way. Ramsay just being given Winterfell, perhaps, or I don't really know. Very tough to decide. Okay, so do we have anything else? I'm sure that we do. Okay, so we'll go ahead and warn everybody that we're going to discuss the last few minutes here. We're going to discuss the previews, the things revealed in the previews for the next episode, which are obviously a little bit spoilery. We've got some scenes
get out of here. Get out.
Okay. We have Ramsay with Theon getting ready to take Moat Cailin. Now, this seems like it's probably going to go down pretty similarly to what's happened in the books. Maybe some small differences, but of course, the main difference is that it doesn't happen until Dance with Dragons in the books. Now it's going to happen in season 4 here. But that's, as far as the timeline goes, it's actually not that off from where we're at. And then by off, I mean not the same. It's not off. They're on their own timelines. They're doing their own thing. The book is not the guideline. It's just a reference material. So that seems, there's not a lot to say about that. We'll just wait and see what happens. It's probably going to be pretty similar.
Yeah, we have the thing I didn't want to mention before, which was that Sansa says, Lord Baelish has told many lies. And we see her, we see that scene going down.
Now, what I think is happening there is that they're making it look like she's outing him, but I think that this is something they're doing together.
Yeah, it's something. I'm not sure what she's going to say there, but that's
I think she's going to say
certainly a case of misdirection on the
the way they edited that scene to show us just that clip. I imagine her next line is, he's told a lot of lies, but he's telling the truth. Something like that. Yeah, it's going to be something along those lines, because I don't think she, as dangerous as Littlefinger is, and as worrisome as his relationship with her is, I think she recognizes that she's safer with him than without him, as dangerous as he is, because she knows that she can manipulate him.
I'm really curious. I can't recall. I don't think Sansa had a change of hair color at all or anything in that scene. The preview that we saw, it was kind of a dull, dark scene. But
I don't think so.
It feels like this would be the point for her to, pivot and to not have red hair and not be Sansa Stark. But maybe they're just gonna, her be. I don't.
I feel like it's still too late though, because so Sweet Robin knows.
Yeah, Sweet Robin knows.
Not talk about it.
Yeah, I guess maybe, but
I mean, Lysa asked him to keep the secret.
Perhaps, she does ask. I don't know, but I can't imagine he's going to be like, this is Sansa Stark to all those lords. It just seems crazy to me, but I guess it's possible. For her to be outed and where she is, and none of them can keep. We'll see. Maybe they'll just, keep Rob. They're going to want to talk to him. It's a whole thing. I just don't understand how they can keep Sansa's identity secret, really.
Yeah, I guess they're just not going to try.
But if they just don't try, and all those lords know, that's a huge plot hole. I thought so from when he first didn't have her dye her hair. I thought it was going to, turn out to be careless, and maybe they'll fix it this next episode, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it does. They don't have to have figured out who she is. And he doesn't have to say Sansa Stark. He doesn't have to hide her appearance to claim that she's somebody
else. They just have to.
None of them know
her. Do they tell Sweet Robin, don't say anything? Like, if they say don't say anything about her being Sansa, then he could be thinking of it and mess up. And if they don't say anything about it, he could.
Well, I mean, that would be a legitimate fear, but they don't have to write it that way. They don't have to write that he forgets. They just have to write it that he's gonna keep the secret, and we just have to believe that that's
I guess Robert just
reasonable.
keeps the secret.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Like
if that's the only hole in that theory, then we can assume that they just won't address that hole. They'll just say that he kept his cool. He didn't admit
or they didn't want to talk to Robin.
Or they gave him a very good reason not to say it. They convinced Robin not to admit who she is for some convincing reason. Like, it'll be maybe a veiled threat, or maybe they encourage him. Maybe they offer him something like, hey, if you keep the secret, we'll do this for you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, maybe.
So he's manipulable. He is. Yeah. He's not reliable, but I do think they can manipulate him, and I think they can successfully
maybe manipulate him and say something. They could tie it to his mother's death, and it needs to be a secret. They're bad men, and they're around, and they could tie it to that.
They might blame him. He's not exactly the brightest kid, so I think they can lie to him and manipulate him, and I think it'll work out, and it probably won't be too much of a stretch. But we'll see. It might be. We might have to suspend our disbelief a little more than we're prepared to. Yeah. But I'm optimistic. I think they usually do a good job on this sort of thing. So we'll see. Let's see what else we have here.
Wildlings attacking. They hit Mole's Town, which is where Gilly is. So what's
Sam looks very troubled. He's certainly worried for her. And
they're talking.
I really don't think they're going to change that and have anything really bad happen to Gilly. I think she'll be fine.
Then we have fight scenes between the Mountain and the Viper, and Alari's saying, "You're going to fight that?"
Yeah, I'm going to kill that. Yeah. And he is going to kill that. He's going to die himself as well, but he is going to kill that. And it's right for him to be so confident because he knows he only has to break his skin. I do have a bit of a fear that the action will be silly. The duel won't be very good, but I am going to keep my optimism and hope that it's good. We'll have to see. Yeah. I think that has been one of the weaknesses this season, is the action has been a little weak. I think
every action scene is a weak scene for me. I would be happy. We just heard it all the time. They fought this lord and they won. I'm like, okay, I'll take your word on it. I don't need to see it.
I did like the Sandor fight. I thought that one was good. I thought that was a good.
The Sandor fight.
Sandor at the end.
Oh, at the end.
Yeah, earlier in the season.
Yeah.
But a lot of the other ones,
you like the one this.
No, the one just now I didn't like so much, but the earlier one season, I thought that was one of the best ones they've had in all of the 4 seasons, just because it was so like tough and difficult and not glorious at all. It was just in the dirt. They were just scrumming around, and it was more. That's how I picture real fights being. Very unglamorous, very unsmooth, and just people struggling to stay alive, and they're afraid. They're anxious, and they don't know if they're going to get out of it alive, and that's the part of fighting that's interesting to me, and something that's captured very well in the books. George captures those aspects of combat very well, and it's hard to do that in any TV show. So I don't blame them too much for that, but at the same time, it is one of the weaknesses of the visual medium. But on the other hand, as we said in the other episode, on the non-spoiler part, this episode had some things that no book could ever do justice to, namely some of the facial expressions and the music and some of the other things. So as much as I point to negatives, I also point to positives.
Can you imagine if you were like books that were embedded with sound? So like you turn a page and like the theme song, a song for that little 2 pages came up.
Yeah,
that would be. I don't know why they don't do that.
That would be pretty cool. It's not that there's greeting cards that have music.
Yeah, it's not that ridiculous. Maybe it wouldn't be like every little page has something, but a new special chapter has a little song. I gotta go.
When you have a friend that's reading Storm of Swords, and you just hear from the other room, dun-dun, 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 and it's like, oh, you got to the right writing. I can hear. You turn the page and erase past and you started playing.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be scary. Or if it's like you turn a page and there's like swords clashing, like battle sounds, that would be pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet there are probably kids' books.
Nobody steal that idea. She had it first.
But I'm sure there are kids' books where they have incorporated sound, just like they've incorporated touch and all those little things for children. Right. And it's easier to do for such a short book. Like such a big book, you have to put it in. There's a lot of logistic problems, but I would like that. Yes.
That would be cool. All right, so we have both reviewed the episode and invented several new technologies. And with that, I think we can call it a day. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure to look out for us again in a couple of weeks. We might even be able to get out our next regular episode in that time, but we're going to be traveling. Once again, I will not promise in that regard. I will only say that it's possible.
It's not possible.
Okay, I will never, ever say another episode is coming. Yeah. They'll all just be surprises.
Yeah.
When they happen, you'll be like...
I'll drop them on them like Beyonce.
Yeah.
But,
yes. Exactly, yes.
All right.
Okay, folks, thanks again for tuning in. Spread the word about History of Westeros podcast, and we appreciate support in any ways you can, social media, financial, giving us a pat on the back, virtual or not. And hey, if you're going to be at Con Carolinas, let us know. We'd be happy to meet up with you guys and maybe talk about our favorite thing, Game of Thrones, right? So just send us a note in any of the various forms that you are aware of that we have out there to be contacted in. Facebook, Twitter, email, all that. And we'll see you guys next time. Valor Margulis.